Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. Long time no talk. It's going to be an exciting week. I got Andrew Bone right now on the line to talk some recruiting, and then tomorrow, Tony Tsoukalas and I are on our way to Atlanta, headed out to Atlanta once again for SEC Media Day. And today on the show, we got Andrew Bone, and he's doing a great job covering recruiting, the last decade or so. And have him on the team at BamaInsider.com is always awesome. And as you know, Alabama's class is number one in the class of 2019, according to Rivals.com. So, Andrew, how this show works is Andrew sends me kind of just a rundown list, so to speak, and then we kind of just knock it out the ballpark. So I got him on the line right now, and how's it going, Andrew? How you doing, man?
It's good. It's been kind of slow this month so far with all the coaches on the road enjoying, I guess, vacation before July hits. Yeah, I guess July's hit, but the end of July hits and the fall practice begins, and then we're into the season, and then you have recruiting season, then you have spring practice. I mean, the coaches really won't get a break. After this, this is kind of the beginning. So. They've been enjoying some time off, but they're about to get back on campus and really kind of hit the ground running with with the rest of the summer into the football season.
Well, I think a good spot to start out with is just discussing the stories from last week, focusing on the key offensive and defensive targets for the class of 2019. And everybody wants to know this: how many spots remain for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, that's the biggest question right now is, how many more spots are they going to take? How many more players they're going to take at each position? How many more players they're going to take on offense? How many more players are they going to take on defense? And you look at the recruiting class right now, you have 20 guys that are currently committed. Now, I think we'll probably see one or two of those guys end up going elsewhere when all is said and done. So, and there's still probably about 10 more spots, maybe 11 more spots left in this recruiting class. And, of course, every time I start looking at the numbers and looking at the players that Alabama's still recruiting, you don't know sometimes how they're going to fit these guys in there. And, and I understand that's what fans want to know. How are they going to fit these guys in there? A lot of times we don't know. A lot of times the coaches don't know. They're just trying to figure it out as they go along, trying to figure out how many guys they can take because, every single time these guys are in town, every single day they're meeting, the coaches staff, they're meeting, they're arguing about, I say arguing, and I mean it in terms of, let's say the offensive line coach, Brent Key, he's hoping to get 3 more offensive linemen in the class, whereas the wide receivers coach, Josh Gaddis, may be trying to get 2 more wide receivers in the class, and, and so on and so on. So everybody's trying to fight for their position, trying to get the right number of guys at their position. At the end of the day, Nick Saban makes the final decision. And what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people think, Nick Saban has had this planned out for a year in advance. He knows how many guys he's going to take at this position and that position. Well, not necessarily. I think he changes his mind a lot more than what people realize. And, he could come in on Monday morning and say, this is the kid that we're going to take. We want him. We need him in this class. And then, 2 days later, come Wednesday morning, Coach Saban may wake up and say, okay, I've changed my mind. We need to have we need another guy at this position, not that position. Or you may end up having a guy get kicked off the team like we saw with Vandarius Cohen gets kicked off the team. So you may need another linebacker in the class, and it just causes a ripple effect in the entire recruiting class. So we try to stay on top of it as much as we can. And, I think we always try to fact check before we put anything out there, really, and just trying to make sure that we're putting the right information out there always. And, sometimes it changes, and it does change a lot. And, but the key guys that we talk about, it seems like we've been talking about almost every single day on the message board for the last, however many months. Those key guys are still in there. And, of course, it's changed. Some have changed. Some guys who may be, they may have been third or fourth on the list of top targets at the position. They may be down the board now. They may be 6th or 7th because Alabama's had all this time to evaluate, spring evaluations, summer evaluations, guys that have come to campus and worked out at camp. They've had some guys that have come to campus this summer and decided not to work out at camp, just guys who have visited. And I think that's hurt a few kids in terms of the pecking order on Alabama's recruiting board. But overall, there's some big-time guys that are still out there that Alabama is still heavily involved in that I think they've got a great shot to land. And I'm sure we're about to really kind of dive deep into that.
We're on the line right now with Andrew Bone. We got a great chat on right now on the Bama Insider YouTube Live. So I need to say what's up to all my peeps out there. Michael Ward, I see you. Fox, what's up? He's saying Tua should start. We'll talk about Tua starting. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be interesting to see what Nick Saban has to say on Wednesday when Alabama addresses the SEC media here in a couple days. And I'll be in Atlanta. Tony Sukalis and I, and we'll probably do a live show or something like that from Atlanta. If you guys have recruiting questions specifically, just post them down here in the comment box, and I'll read them off to Andrew. We got a whole script tonight. We're talking recruiting, and you can find all our coverage back on BamaInsider.com with Andrew Bone right now, who does all of our recruiting, and all of the content is incredible. So if you want to dip in, if you want to try out BamaInsider.com, like I always say, hit me up for a free 30 days, and I'm on the line right now with Andrew Bone. And as we continue to move through, one of the biggest notable targets now in the mix for Alabama is Rivals 100 offensive lineman Evan Neal. What changed, I guess? And is this a sign that Alabama is losing some ground with five-star Darnell Wright? I'm sure that fans would be hoping not to hear that, but maybe Evan Neal is a guy that Alabama could really be excited about, or will Alabama take both elite tackles? So what's the backstory on Evan Neal and five-star Darnell Wright, Andrew?
Evan Neal, people will remember, guys who follow recruiting pretty closely, Evan Neal was actually an early commitment to Alabama, committed to Alabama just after his freshman year. It was a commitment for about a year and a half, and then decided to reopen his recruitment. He left his high school, ended up going to IMG Academy, and just decided that it was best to reopen his recruitment. And, maybe it was best at the time for both parties, because Alabama, I think they kind of questioned some things, trying to figure out, was he in the best shape? Was he going to develop into an elite offensive tackle? And he was this mammoth offensive lineman. He was a 6'6", 350-pound offensive lineman. Well, then all of a sudden he kind of exploded in terms of his weight. I mean, he got close to 4 bills, and I think once he kind of got up there a little bit, it kind of turned Alabama off. I don't think they really recruited him that much and that heavily, and I think there was still some. I think there was still a little bit of interest in him, and he ended up having a great spring, and pretty much from the end of his football season, the end of his junior football season, up until this point, he's lost almost about 50 pounds. I mean, he has really transformed his body, and he's still a big kid. I mean, he's almost 6 foot, 8 inches tall. I mean, he's a monster, but he's about 350 pounds. He had a great performance at the opening over in Dallas, and opened up a lot of eyes over there. But he also made a trip up to Tuscaloosa in June, and a lot of people didn't know about that, and worked out with the coaches and really, really impressed Alabama offensive line coach Brent Key and Coach Saban, and that staff really started paying a lot more attention to him, and he's continuing to get better each and every single day. So he certainly has become one of Alabama's top offensive line targets, somebody that I feel like Alabama thinks they've got a great chance to land in this class. Now, Alabama's got some other big-name offensive linemen that are still out there that they're still going after. Darnell Wright, 5-star offensive tackle out of West Virginia. Clay Webb, 5-star center out of Oxford. And both those guys remain key targets for them. I don't think anything has really changed in that regard. I still feel pretty confident that Clay Webb is going to end up at Alabama. Darnell Wright visited Alabama during the spring, expected to be back in Tuscaloosa later on this month. I don't think anything's really changed there. I think Alabama still feels pretty good about where they stand with Darnell Wright. But will they also take Evan Neal now? And I think that's a very strong possibility. I think they would gladly accept either one of those commitments and possibly both of those commitments. I think that's probably the case more than anything right now. Is if both of those guys wanted to commit along with Clay Webb, I think Alabama would certainly welcome both of those guys along with Clay Webb into this recruiting class, which would, I mean, if Alabama were to pull that off, and it's going to be a tall task because that is a lot of talent to bring in, especially on the offensive line. I mean, if Alabama was able to get Clay Webb, Amari Kite, Pierce Quick, Darnell Wright, Evan Neal, and then you also have Tanner Bowles, but that would be five of six of those offensive linemen are Rivals 100 guys. You never know how many will end up being 5-stars. Could Amari Kite end up being a 5-star? I mean, he had a great performance over in Atlanta a few weeks ago at the 5-star challenge. Darnell Wright is a 5-star. Clay Webb is a 5-star. Evan Neal could possibly make a run at being a 5-star. I mean, he's number 45 overall player in the country, and just had a unbelievable performance at the opening. So we could see his stock continue to climb. And so you never know. Alabama could end up with 4 5-star offensive linemen. Like I said, that's going to be tough to do, but they would certainly welcome it. There's no doubt about it.
We're on the line with Andrew Bone right now and talking recruiting. I'm also showing you guys some screenshots of NCAA football. We got something fun planned for our YouTube subscribers. So we actually got the entire roster of Alabama loaded onto NCAA football. We're going to have some fun this year with that. This is a screenshot right now of Josh Jacobs doing his thing. There's Damian Harris, and then I'll scroll a couple more to check out. Look, there's Najee right now, just jumping over somebody like Najee does. So we're going to have some fun coming up this season. And as you know, that first game's in Orlando as Alabama takes on Louisville Cardinals. So we're going to have some fun with that. Just wanted to share some screens, and we'll be doing some more stuff on YouTube regarding that. So more to come. So keep it not necessarily on the hush, but just get excited for that. We're talking recruiting tonight with Andrew Bone. I'm going to be in Atlanta tomorrow and Wednesday, along with our team writer, Tony Sukalis, as we cover SEC Media Day. It will be interesting to see what Nick Saban has to say on the quarterback battle, right? I mean, we've talked about it every single time I'm on. You guys are always getting at me with the quarterback questions, and I love it. As you know, I still think Jalen's going to start that first game against Louisville. I'm not saying he's going to play or start the entire season. I'm just saying I'm pretty sure that he's going to start against Louisville, and I'm excited to see what Saban has to say. And remember, Alabama is taking Anthony Jennings, Ross Pierce-Barker, and Damian Harris, all 3 great representatives of the University of Alabama, along with Nick Saban. They will be speaking on Wednesday, 1:45 Eastern Time, and we'll be bringing you lots of coverage on BamaInsider.com. As we continue with the recruiting show, we got Andrew Bone on the line. We're talking the remaining spots, and I think staying on offense. Bama recently received a commitment from John Mechie, and Alabama really doing some great things up in the northeast of the United States, recruiting-wise. Who are some of Alabama's top remaining targets at that particular position? Will Alabama only take one more wide receiver? Break it down, Moan.
Well, it's possible, and I think with the numbers right now, I mean, like we've been saying, it's just extremely tight. And as I said earlier, position coaches are trying to get the right number of guys at each position, and I think one more guy is probably for certain, but I'm not sure they're going to take 3. I think that they're going to probably take one more, and then maybe see what happens down the road. See what happens in terms of who's still available, who may want to commit, who maybe didn't commit at a certain position somewhere else. So. We'll see, but I definitely think that one more is a strong possibility and most likely to happen. If I were to pick 2 guys that I feel like are at the top of Alabama's recruiting board, I think it has to start with George Pickens, the Auburn commitment. Alabama would really like to add a big receiver in this class. And, they missed last year in getting the top wide receiver, 5-star player, number 1 player in the state, Justin Ross, on board last year. Justin Ross ended up going to Clemson. I think Alabama felt like they were going to get him in the end, and he ends up announcing for Clemson. And this year, George Pickens, certainly a five-star caliber player. I think he's an elite athlete, and he's got a chance to possibly make a run for the number one overall player in the state. But he's been committed to Auburn for a while. He's been committed to Auburn since last summer, and he hasn't, obviously has not backed away from that decision, but he has been taking some visits. He's been, a little bit open to the recruiting process and open to letting other schools recruit him and take visits. And he's going to take some official visits, that's for sure. But Alabama is one of those schools that he's very interested in. And Josh Gaddis, the new wide receivers coach, got on him a little late, but just because he was obviously didn't get to campus until February, tried to evaluate, try to figure out how many guys that they were going to recruit, and once he saw him in the spring, he became a major target for them. And he was on campus last month, spent some time in Tuscaloosa, just kind of quietly, didn't really make a big deal out of it, but was on campus. Did not work out, just was visiting, and it was his second time to visit since the spring. He had visited for the 8A game, and had a great time over there. But there's some other schools that are in the race for him, trying to get his him to flip his decision. But as of right now, still pretty solid with Auburn, and Alabama's still going to recruit him, and they're hoping to get him on campus later on this month for that second Champions Cookout. Another guy they really like a lot is Jamison Williams out of St. Louis. Jamison spent a couple days in Tuscaloosa last month, and really had a great time. I mean, we got a chance to catch up with him at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, and just had a lot of glowing remarks about Alabama and about Josh Gaddis and just the program overall. He just was really kind of blown away by that trip, and going into that trip, and even for a long time he had Ohio State as his favorite, and we kind of knew before that trip he was taking an official visit to Ohio State the following weekend. And so we knew once he came off that visit to Alabama and then went to Ohio State, it's tough to beat an official visit. Official visits are just, they're a lot of fun. You're spending just so much time with the coaches and players, and, seeing everything. And, it's just a little bit different than an unofficial visit, and you're just having an overall great experience. And, he did say that Ohio State was still the favorite, but Alabama was just right behind them. And he's going to take his official visit to Alabama in October. He says he speaks to Coach Gaddis all the time. So I definitely think that Alabama is a strong contender for him at this time. So those would probably be the top two guys that I think Alabama would really like to get in terms of a bigger wide receiver. Now, Milton Wright out of Louisville, spent some time in Tuscaloosa last month. He worked out at the camp. I know he's a guy that Alabama, definitely has a lot of interest in as well. Demarion Houston, I mentioned a couple of these guys on the recruiting board today in the recruiting Q&A session. Demarion Houston just recently committed to Texas. Now, he's not as big as Milton Wright or a George Pickens. He's right at about 6 feet tall, about 175 pounds. But Alabama likes him a lot. They'd like to get him on campus maybe this fall for an official visit. But going to be tough to pull away from Texas. Another kid they really like, and we saw him out at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, was Wan'Dale Robinson. And a lot of people seem extremely excited about him. He's really quick. He's fast. He's a definite big-time playmaker. It just kind of depends on if Alabama's going to want to take another, slot-type receiver. He's only about 5'9", but he can play. I mean, he plays a lot bigger than his size, and the times that we've seen him, he's just been excellent. So we'll see if Alabama ends up deciding to take him down the road. But I do think they want to get a guy who's 6'1" plus, and then maybe decide on another smaller player later on. So those are kind of the big names that are still out there at the wide receiver position. And they may not take anybody right now. They may kind of wait and see, go into the season, see what happens with Jamison Williams or George Pickens, see if they feel like they may have a chance to flip Pickens at all. and then kind of go from there.
We're on the line right now with Andrew Bone, and now on the screen, I know we're talking recruiting, but I also wanted you guys to not miss this particular story on BamaInsider.com. The numbers were revealed for Alabama's 2018 class, and you can see that right now on the live stream. You got Patrick Surtain, number 2. Some of these guys already enrolled, already have their numbers, but kind of a refresher and get some new guys that you didn't know their numbers. For example, like a Eddie Smith, number 25, Josh Jobe, number 28. You probably saw Slade Bolden at number 29. These will be the numbers that they obviously wear this coming season. Christian Barmore, know a lot of people continue to ask about him. He'll be number 58, excuse me. Tommy Brown, 6'7", 309. What a monster. Number 75. Michael Parker, the tight end, number 80. And the new junior college defensive tackle, number 91, down at the bottom, along with Stephon Wynn. Who's a big boy, 6'4", 299 pounds. We're talking recruiting tonight on the BamaInsider.com live stream on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Bone, we got a question from one of your subscribers on the premium message board. Bone, are there still any silent commits for Alabama that you can talk about publicly? This is from Bama Built 22 on the message board. That could be a tough question, but I'll let you noodle with that one.
Yeah, you can't really talk about any kids who are private commitments, and sometimes sometimes you know about private commitments, sometimes you don't. I certainly believe there are some kids who are. I will say that John Mechie and Jaleel Billingsley were 2 kids that we strongly knew about. We knew that those guys were committed, but that we could not say anything. The only thing we could really say is we felt really good about both those guys. Picking Alabama at some point, and we knew that they were committed. They just wanted to, they wanted to get home after their visit to Alabama and announce their commitment the way they wanted to, which was, try to find a video production to do a cool commitment, not ceremony, but just a little feature for everybody. So, that's what they did, and they were able to do that and keep it quiet. And even though everybody assumed they were going to announce for Alabama, they did it the right way. And I think there's certainly some kids who are out there that have told Alabama that they're coming, but have not necessarily announced or planned an announcement. And unless you've planned an announcement, I don't really consider you a silent commitment, because anything can happen. There's so many kids that I've talked to and followed and heard that they've committed, a few different times and then end up going elsewhere. There's kids who are, they may even be on the Alabama. If you walk in the Alabama recruiting room, you may see commitments on one board and see a list of guys, and you may see a guy that isn't publicly committed but is privately committed, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, he's signed elsewhere. So stuff like that happens all the time, and you just don't know what may happen. But like I said, I do feel pretty good about a couple kids saying that they're committed to Alabama, but you just never know until they actually announce that decision.
We're on the line right now with Andrew Bone, who does our recruiting for BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson, host of the show, and we got some great things coming forward this weekend with SEC Media Day taking place on Wednesday. As I continue to mention, be sure and look for our coverage on BamaInsider.com. Talking recruiting tonight, and we're almost to the season. The season will kick off. A lot of people like to pin it on SEC Media Day, but then again, there's like a week after that where it's a little bit slow, and then we have that big recruiting barbecue that'll kind of be the kickoff, and then everybody will get locked and loaded. August 4th is the date you need to have pinned down as the first practice for Alabama's season. Andrew, everybody wants to know about Trey Sanders, another important target for Alabama on the offensive side of the ball. Big-time running back, 5-star running back. Everybody loves him. Everybody wants him. Someone said that he's a Florida lean. What's the latest on him? Is Alabama still trending in the right direction with the 5-star running back at the IMG Academy and Trey Sanders?
Well, it's crazy how quickly things can change, and you just don't know what may happen 3 months from now. But 3 months ago, I would have said, no, Trey Sanders isn't going to end up in Alabama's class. And 3 months before that, I would have said Alabama was going to get him. So things change all the time with Trey, it seems like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way things go, and it's recruiting. I mean, that's the simple truth of it. I mean, you can lean one school one day and lean to another school the next day. I remember Henry Ruggs, when he was about to announce his commitment on Tuesday, before he was about to announce his decision on that Wednesday, he was leaning towards Florida. That's where he was going to go. And then on signing day, when he woke up, he changed his mind, decided to go to Alabama. So that stuff happens all the time. Even though people may not want to believe it, people wanted to believe that he was privately committed for months. I mean, he was certainly going to end up going to Florida until he changed his mind at the last minute. And that just happens. But with Trey, I definitely think that Alabama has made up a lot of ground there. Even with his brother, Trey Sanders, ended up going down to Florida as a preferred walk-on, and a lot of people assumed that was going to kind of seal the deal with Trey with Florida. And I'm not sure that's going to be the case anymore. I think it does have a little bit of an impact on him, and I think if his brother wasn't going there, I think he would end up. I don't think Florida would be much of a consideration. I think he would go somewhere else. Not saying he would definitely rule them out, but I think that they would be kind of on the outside looking in. But because his brother's there, I think they're definitely a strong contender. But he visited Alabama in June. May come back to Tuscaloosa this month for the cookout. Now, there's been some discussion, about him possibly being a private commitment. I haven't really gotten that vibe. I do think that Alabama's very high on his list, and could he potentially commit before the season starts? I think that's a possibility, especially if he makes it back down to Tuscaloosa this month. But yeah, I do think that Alabama is trending in the right direction for him, but a long way to go. And he's in Florida. So always tough to pull those Florida kids, but Alabama's been able to do that for several years. I mean, they've got they've got some really good All-Americans from the Sunshine State over the course of the last 10 years. They've got a Heisman Trophy winner, a Bolitnikoff Award winner, a Doak Walker Award winner, all from the Sunshine State. So Alabama should be able to continue to do well recruiting in that state, regardless if it's Trey Sanders or somebody else. But getting Trey Sanders, also having Evan Neal blocking for him at IMG Academy, that certainly would be a nice 1-2 punch. Getting those two kids from that school this year, if Alabama's able to do it.
What's good, everybody? It's Kyle Henderson along with Andrew Bone, and we're trying to get the technology to bring in Bone on the split screen. It's going to happen. We're in the process, so it's going to happen eventually, and it'll be nice just to have Bone's face and my face, and we'll be talking side by side, and that's coming. So just hang tight. Thanks for joining us. Got a good following tonight. Dekendo, what's up? I see you, Tim, Bradley, Justin. I know you guys are always on the shows, and we appreciate you guys. Hanging out with us tonight as we talk Alabama football. SEC Media Day, just a couple days away. It's already started in Atlanta. Jimbo Fisher today with some interesting comments regarding the ACC being better than the SEC. I'm not sure if I agree with that. And it'll be interesting to see Jimbo and Texas A&M head down to Tuscaloosa in September. That should be quite the showdown to kick off the SEC games. I want you guys, if you guys have any recruiting questions, you guys can pop them in the comment box, and I'll read them off to Andrew, and he can get back to you guys. We're moving through the show, and Bone, I'm kind of skimming through your list right now, and this is like this name has come up a couple times. These two names, Kayvon Thibodeau and Nakobe Dean. We've talked about them a lot. Alabama's top linebacker targets. What's the latest with both of those guys? Is Alabama on the lead? I know that a lot of people are crossing their fingers for both of those big-time targets. So where does Alabama stand with those guys? And kind of give us the rundown.
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no doubt both those guys are major targets for Alabama. Two guys who are heavily recruited by a lot of schools, two guys who are heavily wanted by a lot of schools, especially Alabama. And Alabama's done a great job recruiting both of them in different ways. And Kayvon Thibodeau has, he actually visited Alabama in the spring and named Alabama as his favorite after that trip, and it seemed like he was actually on the verge of announcing a decision. And just coming off that first visit to Alabama, was just kind of blown away by everything. He's got a great relationship with the coaching staff, Tosh LaPoy, Jeff Banks, and those guys have just recruited him extremely well. And then he decided to hold off. He decided to wait, took a few more visits, came back from a trip to Florida State. Just really, really impressed with his trip down to Tallahassee and meeting with Coach Taggart and that coaching staff. So, I think that that kind of slowed him down a little bit, made him take a step back and think about things. And he started taking some more visits. But then he made it back to Tuscaloosa in June, that Champions Cookout, his second trip on his own dime from California to Tuscaloosa. So I think that says a lot about his high interest in Alabama. I don't think he'll make the second cookout, but you never know what may happen. I mean, if he does make that second cookout, really watch out for that one, as a possible commitment. But I think for this second cookout that's coming on later on this month, it's going to be a majority of kids who didn't make that first one. But of course, they're going to try to get some other kids on campus again as well. But I definitely think that Alabama is very high on his list, and we'll see when he announces that decision. Could be before the season, but could easily be all the way up until December, or maybe even in January at one of the American games. So we'll wait and see what happens with him. Now, Nakobe Dean, number one inside linebacker in the country out of Horn Lake High School in Mississippi, has made several trips to Alabama and has already taken his official visit to Alabama. So, it gives Alabama, kind of an edge right now, I think, for him, just because he's taken an official visit, came off very high off that trip, and actually was in Tuscaloosa the following weekend for his team's 7-on-7 tournament down at the practice facility. But I do think that Alabama has a very good chance to get him. The only problem there for Alabama is he hasn't taken his official visits elsewhere, like to Georgia and to LSU, the two schools that I think are the main competitors to Alabama for him. I really think it's going to end up coming down to Alabama and Georgia for him. A lot of people think that Georgia has an edge. One day it's Georgia, one day it's Alabama. So I definitely think it's a tight race right there for him. So we'll see what happens, but obviously Alabama loves him. They need it. They really need middle linebackers in this class. They have one, but I think they would really like to get maybe two more inside linebackers in this class. And Nakobe Dean definitely a major target for them. So I think we'll probably won't see anything happen for him for at least a few months. Could he potentially surprise and make a decision? It's possible. I wouldn't rule it out, but as of now, he plans on taking the rest of his official visits in the fall and then making a decision.
We're on the line with Andrew Bone. We're talking Alabama football recruiting. You can catch all our live streams on YouTube. We also put this in podcasts. I know a lot of people have asked us about transcripts. We're probably not going to put out transcripts from these shows. We'll put them in podcast format. But Andrew also does a complete question and answer series that is, just the text version, because I know a lot of people are coming from different angles. Some people like the YouTube, some people like the podcast, some people just like the straight up message board. So we'll make sure and put all our content where you can find it and make things easier for you. And we appreciate you subscribing to BamaInsider.com along with this YouTube channel. Really want to make this channel grow, and we'll be bringing you some great stuff from Atlanta as SEC Media Days is just a couple days away. Andrew, as we continue to talk about linebackers, who are some other linebacker targets? Will Alabama take 3 more at the position?
Well, it's possible, and I've been saying for a while that Alabama was going to take 5, and that was really kind of the plan from the very start, that Alabama wanted to sign 5 linebackers. Really kind of looking at 3 outside guys. Maybe one of those guys that could play inside or outside, and two true inside linebackers. That was kind of the plan. But with the way things have been going, in Tuscaloosa, of course, Alabama just recently dismissed Vandaris Cohen, as we talked about. Alabama could certainly use some more help, and I think that they could easily, in my opinion, I say easily. It's probably going to be tough just because of numbers, but I think they are strongly considering taking 6 linebackers this year.
Wow.
And there's some other big names that are out there that we've talked about a lot throughout the last several months. Probably the most notable name is Christian Harris out of Louisiana. Christian Harris has visited Alabama several times. Plans on returning to Tuscaloosa later on this month for that cookout. So keep a close eye on him. Alabama's still very high on him. Really likes him a lot, and we'll see what happens. But I definitely think that Alabama's still very much a contender for him. Ryan Davis out of Apopka, Florida, very high on Alabama after making a trip to Tuscaloosa for that first cookout last month. I think that kind of opened his eyes a little bit to Alabama because we spoke with him at the 5-Star Challenge. He says, he's definitely taking an official visit to Alabama, excited about going back. And, I think before then, Georgia was the clear-cut favorite for him. Everybody's been saying Georgia for him for a very long time. And I do think that Georgia probably still has the edge for him, but anything can happen, especially if he makes it back to Tuscaloosa for an official visit. And Alabama presses hard for his commitment. There's a couple West Coast kids, Henry Oda Toda. I can never say it perfectly, but a lot of people who follow recruiting know who I'm talking about. He's a very talented linebacker, one of the top linebackers in the country that Alabama's involved with. Daniel Himila. Also another very talented linebacker out of California. The 2 guys out of California, they really like a lot. And we'll see if they end up, possibly going back in on some other guys. We saw Kane Patterson just recently commit to Ohio State. And I'm not saying he committed to Ohio State because there wasn't a spot at Alabama, because I think that, Ohio State could have easily won that battle regardless. But I do think that Alabama didn't have a spot for him at the time he was ready to commit. And I think that they would possibly look at him down the road and possibly go, in case they end up missing on some guys. If they missed on Nakobe Dean and maybe Christian Harris or Ryan Davis, they could extend an offer to him and see if he's, possibly still interested. Lakia Henry, top JUCO linebacker in the country, committed to Tennessee, was heavily favoring Alabama early in the recruiting process, but then it just kind of faded, and I think it faded on both sides. So it'll be interesting to see if Alabama potentially goes back in that direction. So there's still some guys out there that I think that they would still, they may still stay in contact with just to keep the communication lines open, and then possibly decide down the road. But yeah, I think that's just some, those are some situations that Alabama hopes they don't have to get in, because they hope that they can get Nakobe Dean and Christian Harris or Kayvon Thibodeau on the commitment list before that happens.
We're on the line with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson. We got a question from one of our faithful followers on YouTube, DJ the Star, always joining us, and he wants to know, and I want to know, is there a commitment, or not a commitment, but a roster or a rundown of who's going to be at this champion barbecue here coming up?
Not yet. Not yet. I mean,
Tell us,
Alabama
Bone.
coaches, they've kind of been on the road enjoying their vacation, and I don't think they've even they probably haven't thought about it much. But there have been a few kids who have told me that they are planning on coming. Christian Harris is one of them. Wandale Robinson out of Kentucky, the 4-star wide receiver out of Lexington, plans on making his way back to Tuscaloosa. Those are a few guys. Now, we may see a couple kids from Florida make the trip up. Akeem Dent, the 5-star cornerback, committed to Florida State. He mentioned possibly going back up there in late July for a visit, so that would be for the cookout. But I would expect some big names at that event, and we'll probably have that.
And Bone,
we'll have that posted in the next week or so.
And to interrupt, hey
Bone.
Bone.
Once Alabama coaches get back onto campus, they'll figure out who they can get on campus for that event.
And Bone, he also wants to know if anyone's on commitment watch.
On commitment watch, I don't think so. Not in terms of the next week or two. I think we're kind of, in that phase where it's just kind of waiting right now to see what happens, and maybe not, may not see anything up until the cookout. See who actually comes to the cookout. Especially if if a guy like Trey Sanders comes back, or possibly Dax Hill. Dax Hill expects to announce a decision in early August. So, Dax is probably the main guy that is probably on commitment watch in terms of kids that we know that are going to commit soon. But you never know. Any kids can pop at any moment. Just like we saw Byron Young announce his decision on July 4th at midnight. Will we see something like that happen again? You never know. So, but we're keeping a close eye on everything, and I would expect Alabama to get a couple more commitments before the start of the football season, before the start of fall practice. So, just keep a close eye on the Bama Insider board for any nuggets, because we have them daily on the site.
That's right. As we close out the show, Bone, our final question that I wanted to ask you is regarding Dax Hill, and how do you see things shaping up at defensive backs? Are there some players being asked to potentially wait? And as you mentioned, can Alabama get Dax Hill on board next month?
I think they can, and I think that's the way that a lot of people are leaning right now. And he hasn't. I don't think he's really given an indication as to where he's leaning. I spoke to him after his official visit to Alabama last month, and based on the conversation I had with him, it certainly sounded like Alabama was in the driver's seat. But he still wanted to take his official visits just to kind of make sure. He wanted to compare all these other official visits to Alabama. He said Alabama just kind of set the bar, and he wants to take these other trips and kind of make that decision down the road. And now all of a sudden, he's decided to push his time frame up a little bit. Has not taken any more visits. Now he still might. There's a chance that he may take not an official visit, but he may take an unofficial visit in late July, possibly to Oklahoma or maybe somewhere else. But just from talking to different people and not talking to people just in Tuscaloosa or with connections to Alabama, but people who are connected in other parts of the country, whether it be Ohio State or Oklahoma, wherever it may be. It seems like a lot of people are kind of on the same page as he's leaning towards Alabama. And that's kind of the feeling that a lot of people are getting right now. So we'll see. I mean, obviously that would be a huge pickup for the Crimson Tide going into the season, landing the number one safety in the country, a five-star player that everybody in the country seems to want. And especially going into Oklahoma and getting him, going up against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, going up against Ohio State and Clemson and Michigan, schools that he's been very high on throughout the recruiting process. But he just had a great trip to Tuscaloosa, last month, and I definitely think that Alabama's in the driver's seat heading into this kind of final lap before he makes that decision. So we'll see what happens between now and then. Will Alabama take another defensive back? No doubt. Alabama wants to get a cornerback in this class, and it's a really talented safety class. It's probably one of the best safety classes that we've seen in quite a while. I mean, there's just so many elite safeties that are out there, and Alabama's obviously got a tremendous class so far in the defensive backfield, but they definitely want to get a cornerback. And Jeffrey Carter out of Texas has been very high on Alabama's wish list for a long time. Made it to Tuscaloosa last month, spent a few days at Alabama, and it seemed like he was on the verge of announcing for Alabama, but decided to hold off. Now it's starting to seem like Texas A&M's getting a lot of momentum for him. But someone asked earlier about guys who are going to come back for the cookout this month. We're hearing that Jeffrey Carter is going to be coming back, so we'll see if he makes it back to Tuscaloosa for that event. But he's in daily communication with the Crimson Tide coaching staff. And, somebody that Alabama really likes a lot. So, keep a very close eye there. But Alabama has has their eyes set on some big name defensive backs, and there's still some safeties that are out there that Alabama still really likes, including Nick Cross out of Maryland, and his teammate DeMarcus Helms is an Alabama commitment. So Alabama very high on Nick Cross. They're still very high on Nola Pola Gates out of Arizona. So those are some names to to really keep an eye on. But Alabama's got a chance to really sign a great defensive back class, and it would certainly certainly be huge if they were able to get Dax Hill on board next month.
All right. Wanted to thank Warren and Corey for just joining us. We appreciate you guys joining in the show. Hey, Bone, one more question before we let you go and before we end the show. This comes from Corey Watts, who's a YouTube subscriber. What's the word on DeMarvin Leal? Is there a chance Alabama flips him?
Well, with Lil, it's always going to be tough, especially in the state of Texas. And we didn't really talk about defensive line recruiting in this little session that we've had tonight. Alabama's obviously put together a really strong defensive line class thus far. And DeMarvin Lil is certainly a big time target. He made an official visit to Alabama last month and is in constant communication with Alabama, but I think he's also in constant communication with Texas A&M. A&M's definitely not want to let go of his commitment. They want to keep him on board as long as possible. As long as they can. I say as long as possible, and that just means they can keep him until he signs that letter of intent. But I think it's definitely a battle for him at this time. It's hard to say, yes, he's going to flip. No, he's not going to flip. I think it's just a recruiting war right now. He may be waiting to see kind of how things go on the football field this year for A&M with a new coaching staff. And, I think he kind of understands how Alabama's going to be regardless. And I think that Alabama's certainly going to be pushing hard for his commitment. But they still got some big names that they're going after. They're still going after Mississippi State commitment Nathan Pickering, who I think will still visit Alabama down the road. And obviously there's some big names like Ishmael Sopsher, the 5-star defensive tackle out of Louisiana, Fatui Tuatele out of Hawaii, who Alabama really likes and has recruited for a while and has made a couple trips from Honolulu to Tuscaloosa already this year. Siaki Akea, the big defensive tackle out of Utah. I definitely think that Alabama, I know Alabama likes him a lot. I've heard it's going to be a little tough for him to come all the way. And I say all the way. Now, we've seen a lot of top kids from the West Coast and even from Utah come from that part of the country all the way to Alabama. But I heard it's going to be a little tougher to recruit him, to pull him away from out there. So we'll see if Alabama's able to pull him away from the Pac-12. But definitely some big names that are still out there on the defensive line that Alabama's got a chance to land. And they've got 5 commitments right now. And I think they'll end up signing 5 or 6 guys at the end of the day.
Good stuff, Bone. Always knocking out home runs and always providing the recruiting nuggets that our subscribers deserve. If you guys want the daily nuggets, head on over to BamaInsider.com. Andrew Bone always dropping the nuggets. Tony Tsoukalis bringing the team scoop. Myself kind of wearing multiple hats here at BamaInsider.com. We'll be in Atlanta starting tomorrow through Wednesday as Alabama heads to SEC Media Day. Nick Saban, Anthony Jennings, Ross Pierce-Barker, Damian Harris, all in Atlanta to talk to the media, to ask and answer those tough questions that we'll be feeding them. Stay tuned for those questions regarding the quarterback competition that Nick Saban will definitely be asked. From beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is the BamaInsider.com live stream on YouTube. Be sure and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe on YouTube and subscribe at BamaInsider.com. For Andrew Bone, myself, Kyle Henderson, we'll catch you guys soon on the next show for BamaInsider.com. Be good people, everybody. And, of course, as we always say, if you're in the United States military, we appreciate what you guys do for this great country. We never forget it. Have a good evening, and we'll catch up with you guys soon.